Welcome to Reclaimed Heritage,
a place where we discuss traditional skills for the practical home.
We're your hosts, Christy,
Kari,
and Elaine.
Sourdough is the oldest way of making bread and uses naturally occurring wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria. It produces bread with a distinctive taste, but it is about far more than amazing flavor and nutrition. The process of baking sourdough is sensuous. It nurtures both mind and body and requires a thoughtful and spiritual approach. Artistic and scientific, it is a combination of passion, patience, dedication, and craftsmanship. It is about connection using hands, touch, smell, taste, sight, heat, and mind. These elements, which have been largely lost in the drive to make bread a commercially produced product, are not independent of each other. They are the cornerstones of sourdough. Excerpt from The Sourdough School, Vanessa Kimball.
Welcome back. We are still in season 1. This is episode 6, and today we are talking all things sourdough.
Yes.
Before we do, How are we doing this week?
It's good. We had a crazy weather week. Tons of snow, very cold. School was canceled, which we homeschool, so it doesn't really affect most of us except my husband's home.
Yeah, for us, it's like a sledding day.
Yeah, they built snowmen. It was perfect snow to go outside and play.
Yes.
So that was good. Lots of extra mud in my house from the snowy.
That's my favorite. I just love that.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm joking.
I wish
Love
our
the
Ohio
snow.
weather was just like 2 feet of snow, roads get cleared, but it stays pretty and not muddy until spring.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen. We have like seasons of
I
mud.
know. I know.
Yeah.
Not like Vermont. We don't have like a mud season like they do, but it's still between the dogs and the kids. And I feel like my floor is dirty all winter.
Yes,
is.
we had the struggle to find everything. The coats, the hats, the boots.
Yeah.
I have kids who just want to wear their regular shoes out to the snow. And
That works.
Until you want to go somewhere and their shoes are soking wet and they have nothing to wear. But
Yeah. I have married kids who keep coming home like, is that mine? I'm like, if it didn't go with you.
I know, right?
Free.
There's like a time of expiration
Yeah.
because somebody
Oh,
else
my
has already
goodness.
adopted it.
Yeah. Sorry.
And
You handed it down involuntarily.
yes,
Oh, my goodness.
yes.
Well, and
Yeah.
do you have the train where we start, everyone wants to go outside and play, and by the time the last child is ready to go out, the first child is coming in. So there's this constant mess happening
Yes.
and hanging gloves by the fireplace.
My girls are just obsessed with getting snow to eat.
Snow? Do you make snow ice cream?
We don't make snow ice cream. They just want to eat it out of a cup
Oh,
with a
no.
spoon plate.
We do snow ice cream.
Did you make it this week?
I did not. Elias did.
How do you-
Unfortunately,
how do
he
you
used...
make it?
What? Oh, my
No, I know
goodness.
we don't do this. We just eat it plain.
Okay, it is so easy. You go out and get the snow. When it first fell, if the dog trampled over it, don't grab that snow. Don't grab the snow. You get a bowl of it, and you do a little bit of vanilla extract, a little, well, we use stevia. You could use sugar, and then milk just until it stirs to a good consistency, and that's it.
But we did a super cold week, and all of us made sourdough this week.
We did.
I tried a new recipe. Did you try a new recipe?
I did.
I think you did.
Yeah,
I did.
I did.
Preparation, right? We're all trying to,
Tried
do
to
the
get ready
thing.
for the podcast to talk about it. But I think we've been doing sourdough in our homes for various amounts of time.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know which one of you is the longest. It's for sure not me.
Well, we've been making it probably 9 years, so...
Okay, I'm probably a little bit longer than you on that one. But off and on. It goes with seasons of like busyness and it is very forgiving, and that's one of the nice things. So
No, I say 9 years. I have not done it 9 years very well, but
Right.
I have. I mean,
or
I
like
started
consecutively.
I started in a bread machine, so this is my
I've
very
made
beginnings.
bread for way longer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bread, using commercial yeast.
Right.
And your typical, you're done in a few hours
Yeah.
in the oven.
I feel like that was
forever
my
ago.
lead in to sourdough.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, are there ingredients here that I don't have to buy? Oh, well, I could do.
Right.
And probably aligned with somebody giving away the Amish friendship bread starter thing in the Ziploc bag.
So, what made you start?
Just I was already baking bread, and I was kind of like, oh, this will be fun. Let's try it. And then, yeah, it was a hit. Like homemade bread, and then homemade bread that's a little easier that I can just like kind of leave on the counter, even better.
Yeah,
so,
right.
yeah, for us, it was a good fit.
And you?
Same. I think at one point we were down to one vehicle, so even just going to the store wasn't convenient. So that's how I started most of my homemaking skills, was being at home, not being able to leave, or needing to conserve money and feed my family healthy. Having flour on hand and being able to make bread at will was it was actually more convenient than going to the store. And who doesn't love freshly baked bread? I mean, the aroma fills the air. The kids come running.
Yeah.
Husband's happy. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a hard time. So I used to make pretty conventional bread, not sourdough. But I stopped because I don't know that I was really convinced that the health benefits outweighed the store-bought. Now, I know that there are like additional preservatives, but if you're just using commercial yeast, it's a fast rise, white flour out the gate, and typical non-sourdough, you are adding sugar to the recipes. So by the time I was done, it was just like, for my time and effort, I wasn't sure it was like so good for you that it was worth the time versus just buying it.
Well, and they put things on the label at the store, with their bread like enriched, and you think, oh, well, that's probably better than what I can do.
Yeah. I'm sure it is better, but it's not. Now that we know about sourdough, it's not like that. So I stopped. And then our family started doing sourdough like this past August. So we talked in our first episode about Bright Hearth and how that kind of influenced getting back in our kitchens. They talked about sourdough a little bit, just that she made it on the regular. She didn't really go into a ton of the benefits or the reasons why, just that it was something always going in their kitchen. And then one of my twins, she's 18 and had just been gluten-free for about 6 months. And she's not celiac. She doesn't have celiac disease, but she has gluten sensitivity. And I was reading that people who are sensitive to gluten can sometimes have sourdough. She was lamenting every single day about how much she missed the bread. Now you are. This is you. You've been gluten-free for a long time.
I miss the bread, and it isn't even the taste of bread. Bread is yummy, but it's yummy too because you put butter on it. But it's the resistance, it's the bite of the bread where that like kind of, I don't know, has this bite you back kind of thing that gluten-free bread, even the best artisan gluten-free bread,
It's just not the same.
there's a grittiness there, and I'm a consistency girl, and so it's just never been my thing. Now I found one of our books that we got from the library, so I am going to attempt to do a gluten-free starter and see how that goes.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know how it goes. So I've been gluten-free since August, and so the irony is not lost. I went gluten-free like the same week I started making sourdough, so I've been making it since August and still haven't eaten any of it.
Really?
So my kids and my husband are the taste testers. I accidentally had gluten. It was given to me.
Communion.
Yes, but it's such a
small piece.
It hasn't affected me, but I accidentally had it like in the end of October, and it made me so ill that it just isn't worth trying. Yeah. But it smells so good and it looks so delicious. And I'm sad every time I take it out. So it probably would be fine, and at some point I'll try it. But my daughter, who does have the sensitivity, can eat it and she's fine. It doesn't bother her at all in the same way that commercial gluten products.
Well, and I know scientifically the structure of the sourdough bread changes the longer it ferments anyway. So if you're making it and then keeping it in your refrigerator 24, 36, 48 hours, I mean, it starts to change from a high carb substance to like a high protein, very, very low carb. So I'd be interested to see if you had fermented it long term, either one of you, if you then could eat it. And it reminds me a lot of raw milk. So raw milk, so you can have a lactose intolerance with milk and then still drink raw milk and not have the same kind of reaction.
Right. Which is part of what there's studies about flour, right? And it's not even just that the flour is bad. It's how they're growing it, and that the crops are now Roundup ready. And so actually what the gluten intolerance is that they've genetically modified that grain so much to give a higher yield in the field that, yeah.
And I can't remember the name. Normally it rolls right off my tongue, but it's like glyphosate. Glyco would be sugar, so that's not it. Glyphosate. That's the active ingredient in Roundup Ready. So they were talking about how like they spray it, and the mechanism of action is that it makes the bugs' stomachs explode. And how that's
lovely.
linked to
They have some funny tummy?
yeah, right. And how that's like happening on a micro level when we ingest the gluten. So
my
that's
goodness.
what they're saying. It's the pesticide that's causing a lot of the intolerance. But
So what do you think would happen using organic wheat berries?
I mean, I think if you wanted to give it a go, I would do organic wheat berries that you ground yourself. And
If you want to do all that work,
so
I will sample it for you.
I have it. I currently have organic wheat berries sitting in a 5-gallon bucket, sealed.
Yeah.
So
I need to get them from you so I can
Yes.
try some.
Yeah.
I think I'd be willing to give it a try and see what my response to that one
yeah.
would be. But yeah, so we're going to back up a little bit and go a little into the history just because it's kind of funny. The original, way back's not funny. We know it.
Egyptians.
Yeah.
And,
It was in Egypt. The Fertile Crescent area had traveled to Europe. And it was there for a very long time. And then the French bakers brought sourdough to Northern California during the gold rush. And it spread to the gold rush in Alaska. And I was sharing with the ladies a little bit of the history. And I found it wildly interesting. And they found it
Ew.
very disgusting. Okay, so the miners would carry their starter, which is what you just add the flour and water to make your dough, around their necks, right inside their pants. They would cuddle with it at night when they were sleeping, all to keep it warm. Now, it did
it makes sense.
Right, your body heat.
I just don't like the cuddling word.
I have never met a miner in person, but seeing them portrayed in movies, they are not like the cleanest guy. You know, it's not like they are in the dirt.
There's some coal miner right now that's going to be offended by that statement.
But at the same time, I'm sure if he looked down at his fingernails, he'd be like, I'm a hardworking man. You know, there is that.
Okay, and we're talking about, a while ago. So they're not with their families.
Right.
And they're out in the elements for a very long period of time. It's not like they're coming home at night to clean themselves.
Yeah.
So, but they did say they're
but it was that important.
It was
it really was that.
And their doughs, their bread wasn't what we think of as sourdough. It's the same exact process, but it really did have dirt in it and was very.
Well, I picture it more like hardtack, like we've talked about. Like with homeschooling, you talk a lot about the
we've all had the
pilgrims
dough
and
that we cook that just
It flattens right
flat
out.
and
gluten-free
super thick and very
crackers.
chewy. Yeah. So it was pretty interesting. And they were saying that still people who are older in age up in Alaska are called sourdoughs. So San Francisco is one of the main places, I guess, the sourdough took off in the United States. But for the most part, everybody in the United States has used commercial yeast. That's pretty much been. Or I think there was a yeast from beer derivative that they would use. But sourdough is it's really very recent. And one of them, it said it wasn't until the late 1980s that even in Europe, they were doing sourdough again. And they had regulations as to what you could call sourdough. So
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm imagining me bringing my starter to Steve tonight, being like, hey, honey,
could you cuddle?
Do you mind?
would you keep this warm?
Our house is a little chilly. Can you cuddle this sourdough starter? Yeah, but COVID, so we were talking about, we got a bunch of books from the library, and all of us were saying, many of the authors at the beginning of the books wrote these books during COVID. So it was when
the
people
lockdowns.
were home and had the time and could invest being there with their starters and their sourdough.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all, during that time, too, wanted that cozy
Comfort.
And, I mean, gosh, what screams comfort more than homemade bread? I mean, there's,
And control. There was so much craziness going on. It was something that you could control in your own home and feed your families. But speaking of feeding our families, so why sourdough? we all talked about baking bread on our own with commercialized yeast, and then discovering sourdough, and well, there's a lot of health benefits. So I've been thinking a lot about this, that really there is no neutrality in food. Food is not neutral. Food wasn't neutral in the garden. Food is not neutral now. And food can either be medicine, or it can be poison. It can replenish, restore, energize, or it can detract from your health. And sourdough has these benefits that regular bread just does not. And one in particular that I'm excited about with the whole gut health thing, because my husband's on this gut health train. It's wonderful. It is wonderful. And it's funny how healthy habits beget healthy habits. So because my husband's on this bone broth train and he's feeling great, now he's making all these other changes that I've been wanting to make, but now he's like on board. And when the husband's on board, he's willing to support the money that it takes to do it and the time that it takes to do it. And one thing in particular with gut health is having a healthy amount of probiotics in your diet, which, you know, will come from yogurt and all different things. However, if you don't have enough prebiotics in your diet, the probiotics they're just not going to work well. And sourdough just happens to be a prebiotic. So I thought that was exciting, knowing that I'm giving him probiotics. Actually, if you can have sourdough, a slice of sourdough with like raw butter on top, it's like the perfect marriage, because you have the probiotic in the raw butter, you have the prebiotic of the fiber in the sourdough that's feeding the good bacteria, and it's a beautiful thing. And you just do not get that with other bread. Even if you're making it on your own, you're just not getting that. So are there any other benefits you uncovered in your research of these millions of library books?
I know. Well, I did think it was interesting because I always assumed that the high cook for that long would kill it. And one of my books talked about how you could take a piece of sourdough and cooked sourdough and you would get a starter out of it. So they've proven
Isn't that crazy?
It doesn't kill everything. It's not, it's not like you're taking a spoonful of. But actually, that's so funny. We were talking about when we made sourdough cookies, and my kids kept wanting to eat the batter. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of inoculation going on here. Like, you don't need to buy probiotics or prebiotics. You could just feed them spoonfuls of raw sourdough batter.
Yeah, there you go. That works.
No, we did talk about the gluten component, how the bacteria and yeast break it down so that it is far easier to digest. So whether you have gluten sensitivities or not, it is just far easier for your body to digest. And really, if you're thinking about little children or our older generations, like their systems don't function the same way as like a healthy 20-year-old. So they're a great population.
It makes it so much easier for them to digest. Yeah.
And then it's naturally preservative, which it's got acetic acid in it, which prevents the growth of mold. Now, I didn't read how long it's like stable on your counter. I've never Googled it or had this issue because mine's gone the day I make it. We don't have any leftovers.
You mean the bread?
Yes.
I've been making multiple loaves at a time, and it will carry over to the next day, which is great for me. So I made loaves yesterday, and we had one of the loaves for breakfast this morning. It's fine the next day. I think we've gone 2 days, and it's fine.
Longer.
Oh, yeah.
It's supposed to be up to a week, but you're supposed to store it. But I don't have it. It's like a brown paper bag. Have you kept yours long at all?
Yeah. I'd say like
I've
a
never
week
seen
and a
anything
half
with
or
a
2
mold-
weeks.
with
It
mold
depends.
growing.
Yeah.
It gets a little hard.
Yeah. And then we just
Rusty.
toast it, or I make croutons. There's other things that I'll end up using it for. The sourdough croutons are like the best, but
I haven't.
it's been many years since
I
I've
feed
had
my
this.
chickens if we have leftovers.
Yeah.
I think but we really don't usually. It's just like an end or something someone forgot.
Oh, well, no. Sourdough does not last
Yeah. No.
at all. I mean, it lasts, but it doesn't last.
Right. Oh my goodness. So I wrote down really quickly some of the vitamins and minerals that were in it, which was surprising. It has iron, manganese, calcium, B1, B6, B12, folate, potassium, thiamine, niacin, riboflavin, selenium, phosphorus, and vitamin E. So it's pretty crazy. And if you're using the whole wheat flour or grinding your own, you're going to gain even more nutrition than if you're using white. So I don't know that we've done a ton of experimenting on types of flours. What do you typically use in yours?
Well, I used to do a white flour, like an unbleached flour rye mix, which was my favorite. And I was just lamenting earlier about this. For some reason, rye was in the stores, and then rye stopped being in the stores. You just get it. Even the starter, when you use rye in your starter, it I don't know. I feel like it gets bigger and ferments more. It just, the bacteria really likes the rye flour. So I've done that. Yeah. Lately, I mean, I have done the grinding of the wheat berries I have not gone straight wheat. I've tried in the past. It's just very dense. I haven't gotten it to work very well, but I have done like a half and half, 50% of the wheat, 50% of the white flour, and that's come out great.
Now your white flour is all purpose.
I just switched to bread flour last week.
I'm like,
really?
I'm about 2 months into bread flour.
And it's good.
It
is a huge difference. Well, I was at our local Mennonite store, and she recommended, and I could buy a 50-pound bag of the all-purpose or a 50-pound bag of bread flour.
I use bread flour for communion bread, but I haven't used it for my sourdough.
So, and this will be a good transition into maybe some of the science behind that we wanted to talk about it. And I was telling the women today that after reading the science behind sourdough and how it works and what type of ferment you get and what you're looking for, it totally makes sense, all the issues I was having, because I was using all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour does not contain regulated amounts of gluten, but tends to be way lower than bread flour.
Right.
And in order to produce the rise, right? The yeast gives off that carbon dioxide gas. Your bread has to have the elasticity that when the bubble is made, it doesn't burst.
Right.
So it has to be very elastic and stretchy and have spring. That comes from the glutens organizing themselves. So if you've ever made sourdough before, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but when you first throw your dough and stuff together, it's very like shaggy looking. And those are unorganized gluten proteins, and then either through time, letting it sit there with a little bit a higher hydration, or through pulling and stretching, the glutens organize themselves and become stronger. So it was interesting because when I switched to bread flour, I instantly had like that shiny, elastic, like when I would do a fold, I could pull it up and it wouldn't tear. Where in my all-purpose flour, I would go to pull it up and it would just, the whole dough would tear in half, and then it would proof very fast. And
the folding is miraculous to me. Like I had Jubilee do it the other day, and she was amazed that it went from this shaggy bleh to she does a couple folds, and then it gets pretty. It gets pretty. Yeah. It's in a ball, like, and the whole texture changes fast. And it's crazy.
Yeah. It's the organization of the glutens. They like get in a line. Otherwise, they're all just messy.
Homeschooled kids trying to make a line.
Trying to make a line to go to the bathroom. Or that's what it looks like.
Or my boy's bedroom.
Yes. Yeah, no, it is crazy. So there's so much behind it with like the temperature that you're doing it at and the types of flour you're using. Like we talked, when you do the folds, it can help. You can let it do a very long ferment and they will get in line eventually.
I'm always in a rush.
Yeah. So this was part of our issue. Like, it's winter and making sourdough in the summer is way easier. The yeast grows best between 74 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. And when it isn't that, it's slow. It's
much slower. Yes.
The microwave has become my best friend.
Yeah, the microwave with the light on.
With the light on. Just crack the door open a little bit. That has made all the difference.
My oven that doesn't work. It doesn't work, but the light works. So that's where the bread's been going.
It doesn't work at my house either, but my oven is on a wall that goes outside. So I think the temperature, it makes it a little bit cooler. I'm in an old house, Elaine. Yeah. So, yeah.
So where have you been putting your stuff?
I will put it in by the wood stove, but we have a shelf kind of beside it that's up high so that the kids and the dogs aren't interested.
Okay, so I tried up over the wood stove as well. Where I got into trouble was overnight. I don't manage the temperature. Yeah. So it did not work. I think it got really hot because we stocked the stove, and then it got really cold by the time the morning came. So that did not work for me.
Yeah.
My husband wants to make me a proofing box, and he had all these grand plans. I'm just imagining, where's this going to go? I think I've convinced him that the microwave is working just fine.
It's a good proofing box.
It's a good proofing box. Exactly.
So some of, real quick, we'll talk about why it makes a big difference, but we really didn't talk about what sourdough even is. So it's so easy. It's just flour,
Water, salt,
and salt.
right? A little bit of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
And
yummy stuff from the air.
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's
That's
that
it.
wild yeast that's on the grains as they're growing. And when they harvest them, they go dormant. You're putting them in a starter, which you have to have a
It's
starter.
bacteria.
So.
Yes, you have to have a
It's
starter.
The healthy bacteria, like yogurt, that you want in your gut. That,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, all starters are not created equal, which I have found out. So, the first starter I started with, a friend of mine had gifted to me, and it was in the Amish community for about 80 years. And I did not realize how spoiled I was, because my starter was active, easy. My breads were easy. When Kari, when you first started doing it and you had complications with sourdough, I'm thinking, it's so easy. Like, I just throw it in my bread machine and it does it and it works every time. Well, I neglected that starter, and I think when we moved, I don't know, it's probably where my Christmas decorations are. Lost somewhere. And I tried to do a newer starter, and it did not work the same. It was not as active. It was not as bubbly. So I would recommend buying one, an older starter. There's this starter floating around on Facebook. I get ads for it all the time. That's 100 years old. So I don't know, something like that. It's easy.
Yeah, we definitely recommend that you either find a starter from a friend, and even if their starter is a weak starter, you can
build it up.
You can build it, or purchase one online. One of our books actually gave a recommendation to an Oregon Trail sourdough starter that is free.
Free's
if you go to
good.
their website, it's www.carlsfriends.net, and if you send them an envelope, they'll mail you back sourdough starter.
Is it cuddled
awesome.
sourdough, though?
I
I mean,
don't know. It
Oregon
probably was
Trail. I'm
cuddled
just
at one
wondering.
time.
You had to go there.
Sorry.
You had to go there.
The question
labeled-
I have.
It's labeled pre-cuddled.
Oh. Make it stop.
Yes, but you can make your own. You can make your own starter at home. It does take a while. If you've never had starter in your home, you probably don't have all of the wild yeast and bacteria as somebody who does. You can do it, but
It takes a little bit
does
longer,
take
and
a
it
little
is just
longer.
kind of a harder route to go. So
And you can Google it, but you're going to find 50,000 different ways. It basically boils down to equal amount of flour, equal amount to water, sitting on your counter. The next day, you do it again, discard some,
Take
do
a
it
portion
again,
of
take
what
a
you
portion
did the
out,
first day.
and feed it equal amounts of flour, equal amounts of starter. And usually by about day 5 or 7, it starts to bubble. You can tell it's active. My mother-in-law just made this recently. So, but you could. It's hard to have a recipe. Some say 50 grams, some say 60 grams, some say
does.
30 grams.
and they all have like a false start. Like your first bubbles are not when you can bake
Right,
it. You have to
Right,
cook it
right.
longer. It's not difficult, but it is. You just have to babysit it every single day when you're starting a starter. Now your regular starter, you don't have to babysit.
No, you don't have to babysit.
every
It's
single
easy.
day. But yeah, I recommend that you just ask a friend if they have one, or purchase one online. Now, even if you purchase it online, you're still a week before you can bake. with
Right,
it, because
right.
you're starting from a dehydrated starter that you are bringing back to life. It's very much the exact same process. It's just you have all the good yeast and bacteria
You have a good
that
start.
you're starting with. So even in your starter, we would recommend using bread flour.
Yes.
It gives your starter more protein to consume.
it's a little bit of a head start kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I read in one book that you could add like a piece of fruit and that.
I was going to say, I've heard of sugar. I've heard of sugar. I've heard of potato water, starting it with,
Really?
where you've boiled potatoes and
That would make sense.
that helps a little bit.
Mine was dying because it was so cold. It just wasn't. When I was having
Poor
so much
starter.
trouble, it was whey. I used the raw whey from making yogurt, and it was like instant back to life.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I think the bacteria and that were good.
It's amazing.
So hopefully we've convinced you to jump on the sourdough bandwagon and join us. Some things that you need to start would be, we've spoken about the starter, of course.
You definitely need starter.
Yeah.
You can do it yourself, but we recommend that you get it from a friend. Also, local bakeries will give it out to you. So if you have not a local grocery store, like find a hole-in-the-wall bakery that sells fresh bread or donuts or something, and ask them if they have a sourdough starter. That's where mine came from. I had kids traveling through Ireland, and they asked me what I wanted, and I said I really want a starter from Ireland. So they walked into a bakery that's been there forever and asked. And they were like, "Oh yeah, of course," and they just handed it out. But our books say that a lot of local bakeries want to share their starter with you. So try that. You're not bringing that back to life. That one would be good to go from the day that you get it. Same thing with from a friend. You could use.
Yeah. And I'm not a kitchen gadget person, but a scale is a must-have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so much easier.
Because not all measuring cups are
keeps it
alike. You think
consistent.
one cup and one cup is the same, but then you weigh them, and they're just not the same. They're not the same.
I won't remember the numbers exactly, but it was something like a cup of flour is like 120 or 130 grams. And that's if you take a spoon and you fill the cup with a spoon. If you take your measuring cup and scoop out a flour, it can be like 160 grams times 4 or 5 cups of flour. It's a huge difference. And so you and I were having this conversation because when I first started, the directions that I followed just said use a scale. So we had a scale for making soap and things that I
never used a scale.
And you had told me you had never used a scale, and then were shocked when you first.
Oh, when I switched over to a scale, now my bread is consistent every time. It's the same. Where before I never knew. It's like, is this going to be the fluffy bread or the dense bread, or like?
Yeah. So
what am I going to get?
Scale's number one.
Scales.
I would say if you're going to buy anything.
You need a jar to put the sourdough starter in with a lid that can be loose
or a
on
glass
top.
bowl.
Or exactly. You need a bowl.
You
sure you have a bowl.
I mixed for many, many months with just a plain wooden spoon.
Yeah.
But for Christmas, I got a dough whisk.
I did too.
It is phenomenal. I'd never seen one. I didn't know they existed. This is shocking to anybody who knows me. Right. But it is super cute, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it brought my dough together.
Yeah, so dough whisk. If you can
Most recipes in the books that we read were a Dutch oven method.
Yes.
I've done that in the wintertime. My Dutch oven is on the top of our wood-burning stove with water, rehydrating the air. So I don't have it. So I usually, in the winter, will do loaves. And then, put a pan of water or something in the bottom. There's some recommendations out there. Yeah, you want the steam. So
if you have a Dutch oven, you don't need to add anything because it steams the bread. But if not, you need to do a pan of water underneath whatever you're cooking your dough in.
Yeah,
and flour and water.
Yeah, and salt.
Sea salt.
Yeah. So, I would say parchment paper for me.
Oh, no,
Yes,
definitely.
yes.
You definitely need parchment paper.
And water, you want just... I've used reverse osmosis. You can use well water.
Yeah, I use well water.
Banneton baskets are fun. If you want to do super fun decorations on your bread, you'll need the Banneton basket, rice flour.
About the water, from what I've read, the thing you don't want is highly chlorinated water. So if you're in a city and you have high levels of chlorine in your water, but I also read from the same book that if you just leave the water out, that chlorine actually evaporates out of the water. And that water would be good too.
It's like 24 hours, or how long do you? Yeah.
So really, just flour, water, salt, and a scale. If you do
not have to go to Williams Sonoma to do
No.
all the.
I know. I paid under $20 for my kitchen scale.
Yeah.
And it made all the difference. And we are going to link, right?
Yeah.
We're going to link.
Yeah. So
below there will be our gadgets, our recommendations.
Yeah. Awesome. Good luck, you guys. Next week, we will talk more about what to do. Like, you've got your starter, now what? The time that you're going to spend doing your bulk ferment, how long, where, what kind of bread you're looking for.
Right.
Plenty of our own fails. I have many, many fails. Come make a square loaf with me. And my chickens have eaten very well since August.
You'll get good eggs. If you can find them. If you can find them, you'll have good eggs.
Yeah, I know. We don't. That's a whole rabbit.
That'll be on our chicken episode.
What not to do. Watch Kari raise chickens.
Oh, you were on the phone with me this week when I had my first sourdough panic.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll talk about that too.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's so awesome. Her fail is so fantastic.
Well, hurry
we'll have
up.
to talk about
Let's do it next week.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today. As always, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, any major platform, all of our major podcast platforms. We're on there. We'd love if you would download
Yes.
the episode.
Rate us 5 stars, please. And
Leave a review.
Yeah, recommend
Share
us
with
to
a friend.
someone.
Yeah, and follow us. If you're following us on Instagram, you're going to see some of our little stories and pictures as we share with you what we're doing this week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.